Welcome to episode 247 of CppCast, the first podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm okay, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually getting over a little bit of a sore throat, but otherwise doing fine. You have any news you wanted to share?
Let me double check some news real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the next conference that I was supposed to be going to is in DC Tech Town, and that is now moved to an online event. That is August 31st through September 3rd. What exactly that means for me at the moment is still being decided, but that will affect the class that I was planning to teach there for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, on that note, I would like to start the episode by reading a piece of feedback, and I actually got this email that you just reminded me of from Harold, saying, in the most recent episode, which was great, you mentioned that many meetups are online. It would be nice to have a list of them, and he's pointing out that there are a few lists. So there's one on the Sweden CPP website, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And it shows, next events scheduled by that group. And there's also, he says, 30 C++ meetup groups accumulated, some of which are doing all of their events online. And then he also points out that Meeting C++ posts their list of upcoming user group events. So that's also a good resource.
Yeah, there will also be the online C++ conferences soon. I know that C++ Russia is to happen at the end of June.
Oh, and that's going to be online also now?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will be presenting there.
That is news that I had missed. I didn't realize that one had moved online too.
Probably makes sense. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. Joining us today is Matt Pusz. Matt is a software architect, principal engineer, and security champion with more than 15 years of experience in designing, writing, and maintaining C++ code for fun and living, a trainer with 10 years of C++ teaching experience, consultant, conference speaker, and evangelist. His main areas of interest are expertise in our modern C++, code performance, low latency, safety, and maintainability. Matt worked at Intel for 13 years and now is a principal software engineer and the head of the C++ Competency Center at EPOM Systems. He's also a founder of Train IT that provides dedicated C++ training and consultant services to corporations around the world. Matt's a contributor and active voting member of the ISO C++ committee, where together with the best C++ experts in the world, he shapes the future of the C++ language. He's also a co-chair of WG21 Study Group 14, which is responsible for driving performance and low latency subjects in the committee. Recently, he also joined MISRA to help make the self-driving cars safer. Matt, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
How's the MISRA work going?
Slowly, but progressing.
They last we talked about it on the show. They were discussing it seems like MISRA is starting to allow more modern C++ features. Is that rightish?
Yes. First of all, MISRA acquired the Autostart 14 standard because Autostart didn't want to maintain it anymore. So MISRA took it and it's the owner right now. So the process right now is to review all of the Autostart rules, integrate them with all MISRA rules, and actually update the rules to the modern language. There are a bunch of ISO C++ committee members active there, including probably the most active there Peter Sommerlath, and a few other folks. I also joined recently. Actually, I didn't even have the chance to meet the MISRA members in person because of the COVID situation.
Are they moving their meetings online as well, like everyone else is doing?
Yeah, they're having online meetings, but because of me not being on the, let's say, new by introduction, I don't have still the access rights and privileges to the system. So I'm still waiting for me to be introduced to the systems. I only attended 1 or 2 meetings on the ISO C++ committee meeting where WG23, work group responsible for safety and security, was meeting with ISO C++ committee to work on the MISRA rules. So I attended those meetings, and then that's how I got to Misra.
Seems like, something like Google Glass or something where we can just be attending meetings online constantly is the world we're going to be in here soon enough.
Yeah, it seems so. I was asked today by my manager if I'm going to go back to work after COVID situation, or I would like to just stay at home and make the desk cheaper.
So your manager actually asked you what you wanted to do. Now I'm curious what your answer was.
Actually, I'm working from home for a longer while, so I'm good with it. Uh-huh. The only problem is that that time before COVID situation, the children and my wife was not at home all the time, so it was easier maybe to focus. But still, I find working from home more effective than being at work in one big open office with many people talking.
Rob, what do you think? Are you more effective at home?
It's certainly, you do have the distraction of having the kids and wife around for me. But I do like the office, and right now my home office is also the guest room, so I might not want to occupy this year round, because if we do ever have people visiting again, I wouldn't want to have to be sharing space with them.
I thought your home office was the ice planet of Hoth.
No, currently it is. Today it is, if you're watching the video stream. Yeah. Okay, well, Matt, we got a couple news articles to discuss. Feel free to comment on any of these, and then we'll start talking more about MP units and other stuff you've been working on, okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so this first article we have is that GCC 10.1 was released. Any significant updates in here, Jason, that you want to go over?
Significant updates.
Yeah?
So many. Yes. Okay.
They say, making great progress on C++20 language support, compiler, and library.
Yes.
Yeah, we have concepts finally in the language.
Awesome.
In the compiler. We can play with them.
I just naturally writing some code that I would normally write. I put in constexpr algorithms in GCC, and it just compiled it. Or I used algorithms in a constexpr context, and it compiled it. And I'm like, and I didn't even think about it. And then I'm like, well, wait, let me see how this works on Clang. I switch over to Clang, and it's like, this algorithm is not constexpr. I'm like, ah. Yeah, so that's, I don't even know if that's listed on these notes, actually. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Coroutines. Not coroutines, concepts. Concepts is huge. Yes.
Yeah.
I used it for a longer while in my library, and there was some bugs that were fixed, all of them for GCC 10, so it's good news.
Excellent. What other compilers can you currently use that have the level of concept support that you need?
Actually, I can use GCC 9.1 and the above.
Okay.
It's not about because of the concepts, but because of the really small feature that I found really easy. And I said, well, this will be probably the first thing that people will implement because it's so easy. So basically, this is about the how it's called. It's about not having to write the template disambiguators, type name disambiguators. I don't remember how the paper was called. But basically down with type name, yeah. This was the paper name.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is small feature. Every compiler has it implemented already, because every compiler tells you that you forget the type name here, but it seems that other compilers do not turn it on yet for C++20, and because of it, both Clang and Visual Studio do not compile my code, because I assume this feature will be one of the first, and I maybe too fast integrated this with my code.
Yeah, so basically in the cases where the compiler says you need type name here, instead of giving you an error, it's just going to effectively add the type name for you there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I thought that everyone has it, so everyone will enable this as the first thing for GCC, for C++20 support, but only GCC has it for now.
The things that we expect are never the things that we get, I think, when it comes to some of these things.
Yeah.
Lots of new warnings in static analysis options in GCC 10.
Yeah, I think we already talked about the static analysis separately, because that's very new, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Context for new.
there's a new flag called fanalyzer, if I am not wrong, in this GCC, but it seems to not work correctly with C++ yet.
I think it was made for
mostly
C. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You're right. But there was... No, yeah, you're right. We discussed that. I totally got confused by that again. Well, there's also some awesome... so I just had this conversation recently with some people on Twitter, where if you run a profile guided optimization, particularly Visual Studio is particularly aggressive about this, any code that was not run during the profile run is going to be moved to like the end of the binary, way out in the cold section of the binary. And then if you happen to call that code, it's going to be really slow calling it. And so that's something that the latest GCC is also addressing by giving us more options when we call the profile guided optimizations to say, don't treat unexecuted code as cold code. Just optimize the code that was executed. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay, next thing we have is an article on the old new thing, Raymond Chen's blog, and this is the C++ preprocessor doesn't understand anything about C++ and certainly not templates. And this is a great, fun little article where he points out how little the preprocessor knows about C and C++. Doesn't know the difference between template brackets and the less than greater than operator.
Right.
So yeah, fun little article. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, you have to watch for commas.
Yeah.
I have those problems already when I try to use type traits in my asserts. Hopefully contracts in C++ will solve this for many years. But yeah, we don't have contracts in C++20.
Nope.
No.
I did notice that there's one comment here from someone that's like, oh, it's fine. That's why you just use VA args. And Raymond immediately responds to him with like, except if you want to do this. And it's like, it's always broken in some way.
Yeah. All right. So Matt, I mentioned that you work on a library called MP Units. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, sure. So this library is a modern C++ units library. It provides the compile time dimensional analysis and unit quantity manipulation. So maybe you know this background. We have Boost units for many, many years. And my library tries to do the same in a different way, let's say.
Okay.
The different way is because it's designed with the emphasis on a good user experience. So it should be easy to read compile time error logs or to debug it, which is not common for other libraries on the market. Of course, it's open sourced. It's hosted on GitHub with MIT license, so everyone is welcome to use it. However, it uses C++20 already, so you have to be on GCC 9.1 at least in order to compile the code. It uses heavily concepts and a few other features, but concepts are the major killer feature here. If you are interested about this, of course, there is a documentation on the website, but I also talked about this on C++ Now, CppCon, and a few other conferences in 2019. So you can find my talks and listen about it. And good news is that you don't have to download, install anything from it because it's integrated with Compiler Explorer for a longer while right now. So you can just take Compiler Explorer and play with the code right there. You can find some quick start links in the documentation with the links to Compiler Explorer actually to start playing with it.
It's really handy when this kind of library is on Compiler Explorer and we can just go play with it.
Yeah.
Agree.
So what exactly, does a physical units library provide? Like what types of, applications are going to be using something like this?
Actually, I started to think about this many years ago while I was a glider pilot flying in competitions. So this background is actually not without the reason here. I was flying on competitions. I met other pilots. We used software for tactical navigation and basically planning the task to be done on each day.
Mm-hmm.
The software that's open source and actually also closed source from my experience as a consultant and C++ trainer is that most of the software is working with C fundamental types like Dabu. Dabu is Uber type for everything in this. So there is a velocity, length, time, everything is Dabu. And also units of any kinds like feet, nautical miles, kilometers, whatever the software is using, really many different units. All of them are, of course, also double numbers only. So there are a lot of problems with the software. Even though this software is tested, even though it seems to be stable, because it's used for a longer while and nothing happened, and no bugs are submitted, for example. But then if someone wants to play with it or change the engine of such a library, he said, do not touch anything because it will break. So it was hard to develop and it's really hard to maintain later on. And this is what I'm trying to address and actually to improve. So people will take the tools to make it right, to make it good from the very first time because otherwise the program will not compile. And maybe some time ago it was not that important because, well, the application will crash or TomTom will provide us maybe a bad ETA to the target. But right now, our cars will drive for us while we sleep. It starts to be scary if you think that way. Mm-hmm. That's the same software that could crash your software like 10 or 20 years ago. Right now may cause a fatal accident. And we don't want to do this. And we should look for the best possible tools to do the job right. And I think it's one of those for especially for cars and aviation.
So this is tied together with your interest in Misra as well, then?
Yes, exactly. I always cared about safety and of interfaces and good usage of strong types. So many of my training that I provide to my students treat about it. So as I said, as a trainer consultant, I saw too much of the bad code to not care about it. And it's not only open source. Closed source is similar.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and it's not on the topic of C++ at all, but what are these glider competitions like?
Well, there are different kinds of competitions. There are, of course, aerobatics, but this is not the one I'm talking about. These are
aerobatics on gliders sounds scary to me compared to powered aircraft, but...
Actually, no, because there's nothing to break. Your engine is down already. So you have to plan, and if you plan properly, then you are fine. There's nothing that can break or surprise you during the competition or just flight.
Okay.
But those competitions I'm talking about are about flying for many hours for a really long distance. We are doing like 500 kilometers triangle in a straight line, but you cannot fly in a straight line. It's like for example sailing. You cannot sail to any point. You have to take account for the wind, and you cannot, for example, sail into the wind directly, right? You always do longer path than the minimal needed. And during the competitions, we do like 300, 500 kilometers on the triangle and flying for 6-7 hours and come back home safely.
Wow.
Very cool.
That is interesting.
So what does, the code in this library actually look like? One thing I'm wondering is, if you're already working on an application that's using doubles for everything and you think, that sounds like a good idea, it would be better to be safe about, our different types like distances and measurements and things like that. How would you go about integrating your library?
Well, first of all, good point is that you can use any representation type. So you can also use double as a representation type. It's similar to chrono duration, where you can set the representation type. So basically, all of the maps will work the same. Mm-hmm. The thing that you can get is getting the compile time safety with it. And basically, how it will start, I would just play with some quantities like length, time, velocity for start, and then maybe start integrating other more advanced stuff like accelerations, like forces and other stuff. It can be done gradually, in my experience, and helps a lot actually. If it doesn't compile, it means that you had an error there. It's like with unique pointer.
I was playing with because so I've been doing a lot of training. Well, I had been last year that had physicists in there, and we were talking about these kinds of issues that you're discussing. And so I played with the idea of my own dimensional analysis units library just to understand what would go into something like this. And mine was very greedy to always reduce the units as much as possible. And I was talking to another friend about this, and he says, no, there are some units that physicists want, like, I don't know, seconds over seconds squared or whatever, because it means something to them. Does your library deal with that?
Yes, it deals with that actually in the same way that yours did. So,
okay.
Yeah, it is greedy, yes. And basically there are so-called dimensionless units. And basically if you divide the same dimension by the same dimension, you end up with no dimension.
Right.
And there are two approaches here. You can end up with a strong type saying I'm a quantity of no dimension. Uh-huh. And basically most of the libraries on the market treat this type specially. This type, for example, can implicitly be converted to and from double or any representation type. So it looks like a strong type, but behaves like a double. So I think that's wrong, because you think that you have some additional information there, you have some additional safety, but you are not. And actually the interface starts to be messy because you have a lot of spin being done there, or some other overloads that provide you this, or maybe partial template specialization that basically provides you this different behavior for this one dimensionless unit type. So my approach was just, if you divide like time by time or length by length, you end up with representation type like double. Just to say to everyone, okay, you just divided this, you have a double, and expect what double does. No type safety, no strong types here. Of course, there is some discussion about this. It's still open issue on the GitHub. So if any one of you have good ideas how to solve it, we have the poll actually pinned on the top of the issues list. You can see it. You can find 3 different alternatives that we discussed and maybe provide your feedback there.
That sounds great for, I don't know the domains that physicists use these units in nearly well enough to know what the use cases are for them, but certainly for any of our listeners, go and find that issue and weigh in on it if you know how this should be handled.
Yeah, we are looking for feedback and for any help and for requirements all the time. Because we are using C++20, actually our market that we can test it is really limited, so every user is welcomed.
Okay. You mentioned a couple other unit libraries like boost units. How does MP units compare to those?
I wrote a paper, and the paper number is 1935, and I compared there at least 5 different libraries, including Boost Unix, Neat-Holthaus, Unix library, and Benry, written by Jan Sendev from Germany. Those libraries are really nice libraries. I don't want to tell anything wrong about them because they have all of the features, they have users, they do not have bugs in it. But basically, there are people that complain about them. Complain about the bad user experience, for example, that it's hard to understand and analyze compile time errors, that there is really hard to debug this stuff when basically the type you are trying to see or breakpoint prints like 100 lines on your screen just to print the type that's provided to the function argument. Besides, there are other issues. Many libraries basically convert implicitly the units to base unit of the system. So, for example, length to meters all of the time. Mm-hmm. And if you're living in US and using customary units, all units are always converted to meters and back with every calculation.
That doesn't make sense.
Which is, first of all, it takes runtime overhead.
Yeah.
And second of all, it's loss of precision on double or whatever representation type. So I took the same approach that's done with the chrono duration. Basically, the unit scale, unit ratio is being stored in a type rather than being converted all of the time to the SI and back. Another issue that is with the current libraries is that most of them, if not all of them, have poor support for really large or small unit ratios. You can see that in stud ratio, for example, we miss 2 first and 2 last of the ratios that are defined in SI, just because the int64 used in ratio is not big enough to represent this ratio. But if you are dealing with things like electron volts or astronomic units, the ratios can be really huge there. And we have to provide our own ratio type for it. Another point that has some issues with the current solutions is that it's really hard to extend some of those libraries. It may be easy to add new units, it may be easy to add new derived dimensions for something that you invent. But if, for example, you would like to extend it with a base dimension, like saying, for example, I want to count persons using my I don't know product that I do, or would like to have like man hours unit, then it's hard to integrate such a new unit into the system as a base unit. Yeah, that's basically most of the complaints. So basically the entry bar to start working with units is too high for many people. For example, to work with Boost units, it is claimed to require expertise in both C++, like templates, metaprogramming, all of this, and also be an expert in the machine analysis world in order to start with it. You have to include a lot of headers. You have to deal with a lot of issues at the very, very beginning. I spoke about this and provided some code examples during my talks on the conferences, so you can find it there. Okay. So how I'm trying to address those issues? I'm trying to make my library the easiest to use as possible. I'm basing on a well-known and proved chrono duration. I'm trying to use as simple types as possible. And I spent a lot of time writing a documentation. It's still not great because, for example, tooling for C++20 for concepts is really poor right now. So Doxygen and Sphinx and other stuff that I'm using there basically have issues with C++20 concepts in the code. But I provided a lot of text on how to use the library, on how to extend it, and so on. So I hope it will be easy for everyone to start with it. Also, I care a lot about those compile time error messages, about the debugging experience. C++20 concepts help a lot here. I also invented something that I call type downcasting facility, which actually should be called maybe like type substitution mechanism, that basically allows you to assign a unique name, strong type name, to an instantiation of a base class template. So if you have something like a dimension or derived dimension or unit, and there is some instantiation of it, for example, velocity, you can say just inherit from it and say it's just a velocity. Okay. So this long instance of derived dimension is a velocity type. And I invented some mechanism to be able to, during compile time, to actually switch the type, if I see this long instantiation, to the one that was nicely named by the user, so velocity. It has some issues, and they were raised. For example, it's one-to-one relationship. So, for example, if you have two dimensions that have exactly the same, let's say recipe, they will collide with each other.
Right.
So it can be probably energy or moment of force, a good example here. They have exactly the same dimension, and they will collide because there will be a compile time error for it. Another point is that, for example, if you will, in one translation unit, you will include the header with velocity, in another one will forget about including this header, you will end up with two different types for the same code, which is ODR violation problem.
Right.
So because of those, I'm rethinking this facility if it's really good to use it there. It's really helpful to have it, but also have some issues with using it. So we are looking for some alternatives too.
That does sound very interesting to be able to give an actual compile time error. You used velocity when you meant whatever, acceleration or something, instead of this long of an error.
Yeah, exactly. You can play with it on Compiler Explorer, and you will see how short and good errors are right now. But as I said, we have some issues with some specific types. We have to find out how to treat them, because there are only a few exceptions, but those exceptions basically are the problem right now. Should we optimize for most of the cases, or for coverage to support all of the possible dimensions there?
I've been quite honestly, over the last few years, trying to understand how Hannah has implemented her CTRE library. And part of that is that she uses function prototypes, just prototypes that aren't implemented, as a way to generate new types and then call decal type or whatever on that. And I played with that a little bit myself, and that seemed really handy. But what I started to realize is that C++ 17, at least 14, 17, 20, by the time we get auto return type deduction in 14, gives us completely different ways of designing libraries like this. And have these, what are you finding when you're implementing a library like this from scratch? It has to be literally a completely different approach than Boost Unit, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I started like you started. You said that you wanted to just find out how it works and understand the subject, so you started to implement something by yourself. Right. And I exactly the same. I started from scratch without looking into other competition code, other designs, just to find out how would I do it by myself with my knowledge.
And C++ 20, yeah.
Yeah, using C++ 20, you're right. And then I was really surprised that actually a lot of things were similar to Boost Unit. Like, for example, dimension is provided in the same way. Like, for example, as a type list, for example. Type list that only contains the dimensions that matter, that are useful in the specific recipe for the dimension, and not just a list of all of the dimensions in the system, like other libraries do. That you have, like, for example, this long list of components with 1, 0, 0, minus 1, 0, 0, 0, minus 1. And 0, of course, could be skipped, but it's not there. On the type list, you can have list of different lengths, and only the things that matter are on the list.
Okay.
But still, if you have really complicated types like power or even more complicated stuff, there are many dimensions already on the list, so it starts to be long.
Okay.
So there are some similarities with other libraries, and later on, I of course compared it and tried to find the best way to solve the problems. Also taking into account the knowledge that's already there, to not reinvent the wheel, or basically some solutions were better than mine. But it also differs because of the C++ 20, because of the concepts, because of the scope that from the very first beginning, from the very first moment, I said it has to be easy to use. And this was my main scope that I'm trying to always have in my head. And every time someone asks for a new feature, I said, okay, but will it make more complicated for most of the cases? Or I don't want to add additional types to a class template, additional parameters, just to not make those errors longer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it sounds like the library is definitely still a work in progress. You're talking about some of these changes you're working on. But you did mention an ISO paper. Are you trying to get a physical units library into the standard?
Yes, actually, this is the point here. What I found as a trainer and consultant is that after C++ 11, no one, even in the corporations that are really working with legacy code right now, no one asks how to measure time, how the time point should be represented, because we have chrono duration, and everyone just use it, and time point for this case, right? So having something in a standard makes it really easy to use for everyone. Having this in a library on GitHub or even in Boost will have like 20% of usage what standard has. I'm pretty sure if Chrono was only in Boost, probably maybe 20% of the project will use it right now, comparing to those that are using this right now. And this is about safety. This is not about some fancy stuff. And as I said, it starts to be really dangerous with the projects we face lately, right? So it has to be accessible to everyone without any issues, without any, I don't know, legal issues about having third-party software or not tested software for some guy from the internet, right? If it will be the standard, it's proven, it's accepted, everyone will use it, and that's the point. Of course, I would love to put it in C++23, but I realized that there's not much time, and basically because of the COVID situation, even some meetings were already skipped, like Varna.
Right.
So I hope to provide some new papers to New York and maybe earlier also on the teleconferences to talk about it. But we have like probably 5 or 6 meetings left before the code freeze or design freeze for C++23.
Wow.
So it may be challenging to catch the train. But we spent already a lot of time in the committee discussing this. We spent last 2 meetings probably about 10 hours or 8 hours talking about this library. So I think we are on a good track to make it, if only no major issues will be discovered and we will solve how to deal with the remaining issues we have. What I found in the IC committee and on the conferences, there is lots of interest and positive feedback about this library. So I'm really looking forward to the future work on this subject. Yeah, and I have to start writing papers about the interface. Because right now we just spoke about the paper I wrote was a discovery paper about the domain to prove to everyone that I did the homework and to let everyone easy to catch up with the domain if needed. So if you are interested in the domain, about the problems, about the current solutions, you should look to the P1935 because it's about it. There is nothing much about my library there. It's about what we have right now in the environment, what problems we have, what issues we face.
I find myself curious with the talk of standardization, what the relationship to a units library would be with the need for just in general strong type defs. Because I feel like a lot of the use cases where we say, oh, well, you need stronger types here, many of those cases are physical units. Not all, but many of them. I don't know, like if your library gets accepted, and I'm just totally making something up right now because I haven't really thought about this, but could I say, oh, well, a screen point is a unit in this library, and I'm going to use that effectively as a strong type def in my graphics drawing library. Does that sound like crazy? Point's not a good example.
Yeah, basically, this library is not a solution for every strong type, mathematics strong type, right? So probably pixels or latitude, longitude, or price will not be the target for this library. Okay. Everything that has runtime conversion factors, like currency, will not be the target for this library. It will be mostly about physical units and probably some other stuff. But still, yes, as you said, the strong type defs, if you had it in the language, it would help a lot. Actually, I'm not the first one talking about the physical units library. Probably the first one was Walter Brown, and he started in the 90s. And he started to write first papers, first talks about it, and implemented his own library about it. And he said to me like 4 years when we started to talk about this feature, about writing such library, he said, I would write this one, but I'm still waiting for last feature remaining in the language that I was not able to put in the language for last 10 years. And this feature is basically the opaque or the strong type defs.
Right.
Walter provided a few papers to the IC committee, but none of them were successful to be accepted.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Strong type defs would be really useful for this and other use cases.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's almost a little depressing. So you've mentioned several times that you're a trainer. You have any upcoming trainings coming up?
Yes. Actually, there was an announcement lately from Jens about the Meeting C++ starting to provide online trainings. Basically, Jens did all of the hard work, but we are talking with Jens about it for nearly 2 years right now.
Oh, wow.
To provide such a platform. And yes, we are starting here. There will be quite a lot of trainings in June from many different trainers. You can register to them and attend them easily because those will be online ones. Yes, besides probably I will have some let's say closed trainings for corporations too in the near future, but that's other story.
But anyone can go and sign up for your class right now on the Meeting CPP website?
I hope so, unless all of the places are taken already. Because there is a limit of 14 people.
In a way,
because I believe that online training requires a small group.
Okay. Yeah, 14 is relatively small, yeah.
What's going to be the topic of this first class?
The first class will be Advanced Modern C++. This is my major first training I do. It's normally, when I'm doing this face-to-face, it takes about 4 days. But for online course, I made it shorter to 3 days.
Okay.
And this is about basically an introduction to writing modern C++ code, about the philosophy of the language. And it's a base for all other trainings I do, because I first always try to find a common ground for all of the engineers, fill all of the blanks, and provide the same level of knowledge. And then based on it, we can move to other trainings.
So this is
this is the first one in the series, right?
Would you call this an introductory course?
Actually not. This is not an introduction to C++ for sure. You have to be an experienced engineer to attend this one, right? We'll be talking a lot about problems that we face each day. And actually, in order to understand it, you have to actually trip of some of those problems already, and seen some of those in the production in order to understand why it's a problem, or is it a problem at all. But basically those problems are not about modern C++, are about C++ as a general, and especially about legacy C++. And I'm trying to show how can we solve it with modern C++ approach. So you don't have to know C++ 11, 14, 17, or whatever in order to attend this course, but you have to have some experience with the language. You have to write some templates by yourself already. There will be a lot of templates in this training.
And you're covering all the way up through C++ 20, right?
Yes, right. So there will be, of course, C++ 11 with move semantics, 14, 17 with additions to the language and library, and some of 20. We are briefly introducing concepts, talking about some changes that are coming there. But of course, this is not a C++ 20 training yet. And actually, it's only 3 days, right? So you cannot cover everything in 3 days. But we'll talk about smart pointers, lambda expressions, algorithms, string view, optional, variant, and many language features that are useful in writing modern code.
You just have to tell the students that before they come to the class, they need to read the entire standard, and then you'll have a good... No,
not really. Actually, I'm there to tell them about the standard. I'm just saying you have to have some experience as an engineer. It's not just for someone that just joined C++ community and doesn't know much about the language. Right. If you're working in the language as an engineer, for example, for a year, probably you are good enough to join this course.
Oh, okay. That's a good metric for people who are thinking about signing up. Now, I think perhaps obvious question, but this class is going to be offered during Central European summertime, I'm assuming. Like, if someone from North America wanted to sign up for the class, that would be difficult.
I think so. I will use scheduling to Jens. So yeah, this is full day 8-hour training. We consider doing half days, and half days are easier to accommodate for different time zones. But 3 days of training in half days will be 6 days. I think it's too much.
Right.
I can do 1 day training in half days or 2 day training in half days maybe, but not 3 day or 4 day training. It's just too much. And
you don't want to
actually
span it over more than a week. That'd be a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And actually from the experience we have in our trainers group in Poland is that people tend to be focused for 8 hours of online training easily. And during the post-training questionnaire, they say it was fine and they would easily repeat it again. And they wouldn't like to have 4 hours a day, that just prefer 8 hours. So it depends. I don't think that online training is harder than the face-to-face one in this case.
Okay.
As long as you have good work environment at home, without children, wife, or having to cook a dinner or walk out the dog, for example, outside, yes, in the middle of the training.
Right. Just out of curiosity, since I have not yet done an online training, I mean, we mentioned that Rob is on Hoth, and Matt, you're in an F-16, I think, right? From Maverick, from Top Gun, that is. And I'm at, I think I know which bar I'm at. I think it's a bar in Eindhoven that I've been to several times, but I can only see the thumbnail of myself, and it was a picture that I just took. Do your students do this? Are they actually like taking their classes from, pubs and the Serengeti and that kind of thing, or do they?
Actually, the biggest problem during the online training is to make everyone having the camera on. And people don't understand how important it is to be on the camera.
Right.
I'm not asking everyone to be on the camera all of the time because someone have to sometimes turn it off. But for most of the time, it's really important to be on the camera for trainer and for everyone, actually. It's much easier to ask a question during the discussion when you see other people, other students on the cameras too, because you don't interrupt with each other that easily. When you see that someone actually raises the hand, wants to talk something, then you just pass him in front of you in order to ask the question. You don't collide with him. If you don't see anyone, there are a lot of collisions. It's hard to have a good discussion and a constructive one if there are like 14 people on the bridge. So then after a while, no one talks or everyone tries to interrupt each other and that's not productive. Also, it's easier for the trainer because trainer takes the energy from the students. If I cannot see anyone and I'm just talking to a dark black screen, it's harder for me to be active, to be engaging for you for like 3 days long.
Right.
It makes it effective, more attractive, more fun to everyone when we see each other. So it's really important to be on the camera for those trainings. And you can provide any background like this one. You can also have, of course, some features, but I don't expect anyone to have key lights or green screen that I have right now behind me, because I prepared to deliver those training as a trainer. But it's good enough to have any blurring background behind you, if you don't want to show your private room or what's behind you, and that's fine, and it makes the training much more efficient for everyone.
So what technology do you think you're going to be using? Are you going to be using Twitch or Zoom or something else?
From the experience we have, it seems that Zoom is the best one. And the next one is Microsoft Teams, but it lacks some features. Zoom have really handful features there. Has like hands, you can raise the hands, and then it's easier for you to the trainer to let's say, moderate the discussion. There are some emotions there. You can say that it's too slow or too fast, or answer yes, no questions with some emotion icons. There is a gallery view, so you can see everyone on the screen, and then it's easier to communicate. But there are also features like breakout rooms, for example, which I'm using for my trainings. So you can expect, for example, that you will be assigned to pairs during online training. So if you have like 12 people in the group, we'll have like 6 pairs working together on exercises. It's more efficient if you're working with someone else on a workshop, online workshop, because you don't get stuck that easily. And also it's easier for the trainer to support 6 parallel groups rather than 12 individual engineers having different problems. So with breakout rooms, you can easily divide people to different rooms, and then they work there in the isolated environment that they can always ask the trainer to come to their room and provide the support. And then you talk only with this small group, don't interrupt others, which actually is common during the face-to-face training. When you come to some engineer, everyone is distracted because you are explaining something to someone. So it's also actually the remote training, online training may be more efficient for some cases. One of them is that when I'm talking with some group, others are not distracted. Another thing I found is that people sometimes in the face-to-face training not asking the questions. They tend to ask those questions during the breaks when everyone is out of the room.
Right.
Maybe because they are afraid of the group, maybe because they are shy, but they don't ask it in the room. But during online training, they can provide private message to the trainer and just ask him, and no one sees the question. I always say there are no stupid questions, but basically sometimes people don't want to see their questions by everyone.
Yeah.
So it's easier to communicate this way. The environment is safer if you are afraid of your colleagues or whatever.
I almost had to say this, but you almost make it sound better than in-person training.
Of course, there are some downsides, right? But as I said, there are also a lot of good stuff, right? Also talking about Zoom, for example, there are polls. You can ask polls to people. They can provide you the answers during this. So it's interactive. You get the feedback immediately. Like if you provide the feedback once an hour from the people, you know exactly if its pace is good enough and how to progress. So yeah, I prefer Zoom for this one.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And as Zoom seems to cover most of the security issues lately, it seems to be also a solution for everyone, and probably the companies should not ban it anymore.
Is there a web version of Zoom for people who, like, for whatever reason can't install it on their
I
platform?
don't think you have to
is.
install it, right? Yeah.
No. There is a web version of it, and you don't have to have an account there. It's just a link you have to click, and that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, and it also have a really good support for green screen. It's much better than this one we have in Skype.
Right.
Okay. Well, Matt, it's been great talking to you today. We'll definitely put a link to the paper we mentioned and some of your talks in the show notes. Is there anything else you want to go over before we let you go?
And a link to his class.
Yeah, and a link to your class.
Maybe, yeah. What about talking about the class? We spoke about the meeting C++, but I'm also I have also the questionnaire on my website that you can register for any training. Actually, in this questionnaire, I'm asking where do you live, on which which place in the Earth. Mm-hmm. So I would like to schedule groups based on the places where they live. So JSON, it's a good solution for the question you ask. So if I will have like 10 persons from US, I can provide US specific time for the trainings, and I will not sleep, but you will have a regular day.
Very cool. Okay, Matt. Well, it's been great having you on the show today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.